Hello, everybody, and welcome to Now is the Time. And I want to just tell you how excited I am about this program today. I met this particular friend, I look at him as a friend, named Patrick Erlandson, last year at a film festival that he had put on in San Pedro, and it was all about anti-trafficking. And so today we're going to be talking about an event he's going to be putting on in about 7-8 days called FatherCon. But we're going to be talking a lot about the issues with human trafficking and men, and how also on today's program, how pornography is fueling trafficking. Welcome to the program, Patrick.
It's so great to be here. I love this.
You know, last year when I first met you, explain a little bit about that, what that was, the film festival that you had.
Okay, so the film festival is called See It, End It. And that was really born out of looking at culture and just seeing how our culture supports the exploitation of people. We have a culture that's now feeding a sense of entitlement that is what's fueling the demand for human trafficking. And where there's a demand, there's going to be somebody who's going to be supplying. And so the vision of See It, End It was to really have something where we're dealing with culture. So film, music, dance, the visual arts, everything, but on this theme that this is not appropriate, it's not acceptable. The 21st century should not have 40 million people living in slavery. And so once we see it, then we can begin to take steps to end it. So if we don't see it, we don't do anything to end it. And just seeing it's not enough. Seeing it has to be kind of the spark that ignites action and an actual change to sex trafficking.
So Ashley, I had heard the stats were 30 million, but now they say 40?
40 million is the most recent, that are people living in slave conditions. So that includes labor, some organ trafficking, but primarily sex trafficking.
Well, when did you first get involved with sex trafficking and trying to fight against this?
Well, my involvement actually came through organ trafficking. So I was working with the United Nations Refugee Agency when they opened an office in Los Angeles and trying to really gain support within America for the refugee populations of the world. And then we were getting field reports especially from people fleeing southern Sudan. So you had the fighting in Darfur, you had the fighting in southern Sudan. So especially a lot of unaccompanied children were leaving the fighting, leaving kind of the danger zones of war and heading across Egypt to get to Israel. So they heard that in Israel they could get jobs, they would be welcome. So there was a group of Bedouins in Egypt that were basically inviting these young people inviting these unaccompanied minors into their community, feeding them, and then calling for a doctor from Cairo who would come down, drug them, cut out their organs, and bury them in the desert. And when I heard that, it just something kind of was just unlocked. And it was just this horror that children who already went through such hell, they already had either lost their parents or their parents sent them away to be safe, and then to have this kind of betrayal where they end up buried in the desert is what started me researching everything I could find on human trafficking. So that was about 9 years ago. 8 years ago, I started working with the Long Beach Human Trafficking Task Force, and primarily on prevention. So for 8 years now, I've just been looking at how do we prevent more girls from being taken.
Well, and as we talked about on the phone and discussing this today, it's not just girls, it's also boys. There's a lot of young boys that are being taken as well.
That's really true, and I think we still have no handle on the numbers because boys are being trafficked through video games. They're being trafficked in different ways than girls traditionally, but there's still this massive kind of outreach even into the lives of boys to get them recruited into this. And then boys are less inclined to talk about it. So there's kind of, we have fewer stories. We have like less knowledge of actually how many boys are out there.
So when you say through the video games, how do they groom the boys in a video game?
Well, one case that I know of, the boy was on a team, playing video games on a team, and there was a team leader. He wanted to buy something for his avatar. I don't quite get it because I don't play those games. But he borrowed the money from his team leader in order to buy his extra guns or boots or whatever. And then after a couple of weeks, the team leader says, well, you got to pay me back. And this is like a 15-year-old kid. He doesn't have a job, and his parents aren't going to give him the money. So he says, well, you got to pay me back. And he says, I can't. Well, he says, well, just take your shirt off and take a picture. And so he does it. And then it's like, oh, take your pants off and take a picture and send it to me. And it escalates to the point where this man was then ordering the boy to go on dates with men. And so there's a whole process of kind of grooming and finding vulnerabilities in boys as well as girls. And you exploit those vulnerabilities. And they learn them through making a relationship. You get to know someone, you know what they think, you know what their values are, you know what their complaints are, and then you feed on those.
Well, I think in today's society, and like I've had Opal Singleton on the show, who wrote the book Seduced: The Grooming of America's Teenagers, and she told me about this video game like Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yeah.
That you can buy a prostitute and then have her killed and you get points. And I go, my kids, I never let them play some of those games. So when I heard that, I go, you kidding me? You can kill prostitutes, you get points for this?
Yeah, right.
So this is how their minds are being set up.
Yeah, and these things, they're all supposed to be, not accessible to minors. But as soon as your brother gets it, if your father gets it, then the kids end up playing it. And I think that's one of the big problems, and Opal's very good at pointing this out. It's just you're creating this artificial reality that normalizes behavior that it's very easy to cross lines because your brain has already accepted this kind of thing, this kind of behavior and this kind of actions.
Now, as you know, I'm working on a docu-series called Freedom Cry: Sex Trafficking in America. Because I've been to Thailand and other parts of the world and was, in Bangkok and Pattaya. They have a 3-mile long walking street of literally just bars all the way up and down, 3 miles of girls outside, just displaying their wares. And it's the #1 sex tourist destination in the world. And a lot of men from America go there.
That's right.
But God said to me, no, I want you to focus on America. Because people just don't think it happens here.
Right.
What are the stats in America of the trafficking that you know?
Well, I mean, the figure that I've heard most often is anywhere between 100 to 300,000, like American young people get trafficked. And it's really impossible to put an exact number on it. Just by nature, this is an incredibly dark, in the shadows kind of business. And also increasingly, it's now happening online. So you now have, in the dark web, you have increasingly the business is being done online, the recruiting is being done online. So it's harder and harder to get, hard numbers. And I think in the human trafficking, fighting world, we have to be careful because it's very hard to say this is the exact number of how many people are being trafficked. But it is huge, and it's across the country. It's one of the interesting things about kind of human trafficking is you have so many cities in America claiming to be the #1 worst city in America.
For trafficking.
For trafficking, because it's so bad in so many places that everyone goes, well, this has got to be the worst. LA's got to be the worst, and Atlanta's the worst, and Houston's the worst, but Indianapolis, you have so many cities that are labeling themselves as the worst city in America for trafficking, which is odd.
Well, it's like, who wants that title? We don't want to be the #1 city, but they almost put it out there as an honorable thing. But I think maybe because they want people to jump in and help.
Yeah,
maybe that's
people
why.
want to scare. You want to get people involved, and if it's just kind of like, well, this is a little bit of a problem. It's not so bad, and it's only those kids who gets involved. But it is on a massive scale. I mean, and just the shifting of locations. So I lead also a group, Men Standing Against Trafficking, and our thing is it's mobilizing men to take a stand, to go out and actually stand on a street corner where human trafficking is happening. And the corner that we're at now is in Long Beach. It's outside of a hotel, and in that hotel, Lynette Washington was killed by her trafficker. And so we take over that intersection as kind of a solemn tribute to not just her, but to all of the victims of trafficking that are being killed and dying, drug overdoses, suicide, murder by their clients, their Johns. I hate that, Johns. These are people with names, and they're having sex with 12-year-old children, and it should be labeled as something other than Johns. But the death rate of trafficked victims, of prostituted children, is extremely high. And so we take over an intersection and we demonstrate on behalf of the girls. And I think one of the things that really moved me in doing that was getting a message from a girl who was trafficked in Canada. And people had posted pictures of us standing, holding signs saying, people shouldn't be for sale and end human trafficking. But to have these men standing on a street corner, and she wrote to me on Facebook and she said, I had no idea that men cared. And in her mind, every single man was a customer. It didn't matter what your job was, if you were a pastor or a judge or a police officer, it didn't matter. Anybody was a customer in her eyes.
Well, that's an interesting story because, and this will tie in with how pornography fuels trafficking. One of my friends, Sean Boltz, he had just said that, he's known, he has a book called Translating God. He's a really good guy, and he's very accurate in the word of knowledge, the prophetic. And he was with his friend. He said, hey, we're going to really pray today that God's going to bring us just somebody that's going to really be touched. And I don't remember the whole story, but somehow there was a girl that was very suicidal. They were called in, and they went in to pray with her. And then all of a sudden she took her hoodie down, and she just said, do you know who I am? You know who I am? And all of a sudden they looked at her and they thought, no, we don't know who you are. And she said, no, you must know who I am. She said, I'm such and such porn star. And like they go, no, we don't watch porn. We're and all of a sudden she just said, she goes, you don't watch porn? And they said, no, we've never watched porn. And so they were able to lead her to the Lord. She was suicidal. She wanted to kill herself. And now she's on the road to recovery. But she thought that every man, she goes, I've never met a man who didn't want to have sex with me. And they go, no, we just want to hug you and tell you we love you and Jesus loves you. You know? So this is why it's so great what you're doing. Well, now the second part, my docuseries, the first one is grooming, the seduction. But the second part of the series is how porn fuels trafficking. Because I've interviewed a lot of the girls that have been, rescued and survivors. And they said many times that the men will come in there with their iPhone and show them, I want you to do this. Yeah. So why don't you go into a little bit about what happens in the brain of men, it's particularly younger kids, that they're targeting to groom at a young age.
Yeah, well, I think the porn industry, they realized that they were missing out on a huge market by not having women. So they started to create narrative porn where there's a little bit more story to it, because women tended to go to erotica and the unfolding of a story. And for most men, the porn was just really graphic, really just in your face, this is what we're doing. They started to create porn for women. The next step is creating porn for children. And so children, naturally, they don't even want to see their parents kiss. They do, but they don't. But you have to get a child kind of accustomed to and willing to accept that kind of imagery. And it doesn't come naturally. They don't, at first, they're kind of abhorred by it. I know of one case where a 6-year-old child was exposed by his older brother to hardcore porn, and he was just completely revolted by it, but he couldn't get it out of his head. By the age of 10, he was just hardcore addicted. Every day just hunting for more and more images to satisfy himself. But you're starting to have porn created for children, so using animation, using different techniques, but creating stories that'll get their brains to accept kind of pornographic images. And I think it's extremely dangerous because you're going younger and younger ages, and those children, especially you take a 10-year-old boy, and he's forming his views of his own sexuality, of who he is as being shaped, and how to relate to other people as being shaped. And so porn goes into your brain, it douses you with dopamine, and to the point where your brain says, whoa, this is too much, and turns it off, so you're not getting the same feeling again. And then that plays into our God-given sense of curiosity, which I think that God really put in us to explore the universe that he made with so much care and heart and enthusiasm that God put into the creation. So we're naturally meant to be curious, and so then it takes not only cutting off of dopamine, so you're cutting off of the stimulation, but then you're adding this whole element of like just an unlimited supply of novelty through porn. So then you create this kind of interest or a desire, an appetite for more and more extreme imagery. So you have cases of, someone who starts just watching a man and a woman, and after a year they're looking for 3 transgender people and a dog. It's that kind of mental, like a transition that you're making through porn, and it's leading you click by click by click to this.
And I interviewed a gal named Veronica Stevens. She's an advocate, and she basically said that they're going after kids, like younger and younger, between 8 and 10-year-old boys and girls. And, a lot of times if a kid gets hooked on porn at 8, we talked about this, that a lot of times by the time they're 20, they can't even have a normal function, as a man anymore. You
Yeah.
know, it's like and you were telling me that the average age of erectile dysfunction now is 30.
Yeah, 30 is the average age. And so it's no mystery why they have, Viagra ads posted with porn. So you're having, because this is an increasing problem. The overstimulation is causing then the physical body not to function normally as it should. And the other thing is you're having more and more teenage children. So I think Fight the New Drug is an organization that has a hotline for young people, and they're getting calls from 12, 13, 14-year-olds that can't do their homework. As soon as they see a screen, their physical body is reacting to the screen. And so the only time their physical bodies will react is when there's a screen involved. And for married couples where we're having guys who are addicted to porn from 9, 10 years old, they end up getting married thinking, oh, this is going to solve my problems. I'm going to be satisfied sexually. I'm not going to need porn anymore. Doesn't happen because the brain has been rewired. It's the imagery on a screen that's actually what the brain is triggered by and stimulated by. So then you're having, the only way for them to actually function with a wife is to imagine pornography. So you've just invited porn into your bed because it's the only way for them to function even with their wife. And this is leading to just incredible numbers of divorces. The figure I heard was somewhere up to 500,000 divorces a year related to pornography.
Well, and I was talking to somebody about this just, when I was up in Seattle, and, the comment was, oh, boys will be boys. Almost like this is just a natural thing. Growing up with, when I was younger, it was just like a Playboy or something, or you had to go into some XXX movie theater, in order to see that type of thing. But now it's at everybody's fingertips.
Exactly.
I mean, and people don't know. I mean, half the statistics are is like a lot of pastors have problems with it.
Yeah, Josh McDowell did a whole study of pornography in the church and outside of the church, and it was really sad. You had so many youth pastors that are having a problem with pornography, and it's something that I think. I refer to this as like the MGM killing, the terrorist attack in Las Vegas, where this guy took an ordinary gun, he put a bump stock on it, and suddenly he has a machine gun. And then you're at a height where you can just randomly spray into a crowd of people. And so what's happened is before it was, you had Playboy magazine, you had a magazine, you actually had to go buy it. You had to, go through the embarrassment of asking somebody in a 7-Eleven to take it from behind the cover and give it to you. So there was all of these things, obstacles to getting your porn. Now it's just sprayed across the universe through the internet, and every guy has vulnerability. Everyone has a vulnerability. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody has a point where they'll look at something that they wouldn't, 99% of the rest of the time they wouldn't. And I think that's where we're living in a time that's just incredibly, the threats are constant. It's all day, every day. And I think Pornhub was saying that they post something like 3,000 to 6,000 videos a day, new porn videos. And they're registering every single click. So you think you're home alone. I think this is one thing for guys. You think you're home alone. You think you're in your bedroom. Nobody knows. It's completely anonymous. It's completely private. It's just you. And what you're doing is sending a message with every click to the porn industry. I want to see more of this. I want to see more of this. Make more of this. And you know who those victims are? The people who are acting in a lot of the pornography are human trafficking victims. So when you're looking at it, you have no idea. Is this somebody's daughter who's been taken away from her family and away from her home and is being forced to do this? No matter how much she smiles or looks like she's enjoying it, that's somebody's daughter who may or may not have any kind of choice in her performing, and you're using her.
Well, and you were telling me the number one searched porn site is lesbians.
It's the keyword. It's the search for item, and I think. That's disturbing enough, but then the top three are within the top 10, 3 of the top 10 searches are incest. So it's sex with my mother, sex with my stepmother, somebody else's mother that I would like to do it with, or a sister. So you're breaking down familial taboos and normalizing this. And again, you go back to this is a 10-year-old kid who's now looking at his mother as someone that he could have sex with. It is so hard for me to imagine how anybody can be thinking that this is a good idea for society, that we are just flooding the airwaves with that kind of poison. So you're taking children and changing the whole way that they see their sister or their stepmother or a mother or their best friend's mother. I mean, it's all just sexualized now, and there's no taboo, there's no restriction.
Well, and that's why, you know, I believe that there's going to be a great awakening coming, but there has to be voices of people like you, people like me and others around the country and around the world that will say, not on our watch.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about FatherCon. FatherCon is coming up. What's the date of that?
November 9th, so it's real soon, like 8 days away. And this is our second FatherCon. This is something that we really want to grow and have it really be kind of nationwide, perhaps global. But it's just, this was really my after 8 years of working on prevention, going upstream was really looking at what's the missing link. What is it that is creating vulnerability in the victims and a sense of entitlement in the exploiters? And my conclusion was it's the lack of fathers. It's the lack of engaged, present, loving fathers in the home. Whether they're divorced or not, every child, Dr. Meg Meeker, I don't know if you're familiar with her, Meg Meeker says every child needs a father. And we've kind of gotten so far away from that. You know, since the 60s, we've kind of moved to, you know, fathers are kind of the ATM machine or indispensable or dispensable. We don't really need them. A mother can do it herself. And so we marginalized men, and then men have basically stepped down into that lower expectation, unfortunately. And it's to the detriment of men, and it's to the detriment of our children. So if a daughter doesn't receive love from a father who actually cares about her, she's going to respond to a trafficker who's going to tell her anything in order to get her to work for him. And boys are the same way. Boys need a role model. They need someone to live up to. They need someone to have to win their admiration. That's very important in a boy. You know, as boys are growing up, they need someone to say, look at me, I did this, I accomplished this. And when there's no father, there's no one setting that standard, there's something really missing. And that often turns into rage. It turns into a sense of entitlement. This is what I feel I need, and I'm going to go take it. And that's what a father counters. And on the flip side, fathers find their greatest happiness and joy when they actually take that responsibility seriously and genuinely and find the greatest joy in life from giving love to their children and having their children respond. That's where our true joy lies. That's how we're hardwired by our Creator, is to have this dynamic of love and having that love returned to us through our children. And that's what we're losing through porn and the sex industry.
Well, and then we're just wrapping up the show. We're going to continue on to do another one. But, you know, we're in a time, people, that everything is shifting, and we need to stand up, and we need to rise up, and we need to grow up, because this isn't just something, like, this is a really big problem. And the pornography, where a kid at 8 years old sees porn, rewires their brain to the point where by the time they're 20, you know, many times they can't even have a natural erection anymore. And, you know, people are stuffing this down because they almost don't hear no evil, see no evil. They don't want to know. But you know what? We have to know, because the culture is going to shift if we don't do something. But, you know, I want you to know that, Patrick, we're going to talk on the next show about other things that revolving trafficking and how people recover out of this horrible situation that the enemy, it's literally modern day slavery. But listen, I want you to know, if you really like the program today, you can make a contribution to what we're doing toward our docuseries and the things that we're doing to prevent trafficking. We're really in a state right now we could utilize your finances. You can go to my website. You should see it on the screen, but it's marycrouley.com, MERICROULEY.com. I'm doing an event called the Holiday Freedom Bash. Didn't have any of these graphics up today, but it's going to be December 7th in the Beverly Hills Edwards Lowell Gallery, and literally Opal's going to be there. Ashley Trevino, a former trafficked girl who now is a survivor, a major voice, you know, that God's using her. And we're going to have some fun music, dancing, food. So it's $75 for a ticket, but we only have a limited amount of seats, so you can go on to marycrouley.com and purchase your tickets. It's only $75, but it helps get the word out, and we're raising money to finish the Freedom Cry Sex Trafficking in America film. But listen, thank you for coming to the program, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
And looking forward to continuing to work with you. And thanks for watching Now Is the Time. Now is the time for you to find your purpose for your life through the Holy Spirit and literally taking the kingdom for the Lord. See you next week.